Hi there, and welcome to Word from the Frontier. I decided it might be good to provide some commentary and share some of my thoughts on Farthest Frontier. This will be a more informal video, and I will be jumping between different Frontier-related topics. The footage here is my first hour returning to the game. I wanted to relearn some of the basics before starting a more elaborate project. And even from the word go, I've made a mistake I would suggest nobody makes without good reason: placing my town center over a stone deposit. My settlers are gonna take a little longer clearing the construction site, which in turn delays the placement of shelters before the first winter. So, regulars of the channel may have noticed I took an extended break over Christmas and New Year. And to be perfectly honest, after playing over 500 hours of Frontier since release, I had burned out a little. I was more burnt out on the genre of game rather than Frontier itself. So I played a bunch of different games over the past couple of months. In fact, I began a second channel to share my creative passion for a wider range of games. So if you have any interest in that, be sure to check out the on-screen link, or from the video description. Anyways, back to Frontier. Recently, the Frontier devs dropped a new patch. This update was mainly small quality of life fixes and a performance overhaul. I am not really pushing the game in any way with this footage, although it felt like there was improvement when loading this small map. It could just be suggested bias though, because I'm aware of the recent performance update. Although the performance improvements are generally well received, I think a lot of us look forward to more content-oriented updates during the lead-up to the full release of Frontier. On the topic of updates and what we might like to see in the future, here is my top 5 wish list for Farthest Frontier. Number 5. Toggle following or focus highlight when interface is hidden. What I mean by this is when you select and follow a villager, they have this yellowish gold highlight around them, even when you turn the UI off. There may be a good reason for this, which is why I am suggesting a secondary toggle for the highlight itself. Number 4. Customizable banners and flags. It would be great to use some basic in-game tools to design a crest for your town, and options to display it. Possibly additional flag poles and banner hanging options to couple with customizable banner design. Number 3. More camera functionality. This was briefly addressed during the most recent developer vlog. That first person is a little tricky, as it would require a skybox to be added. I guess this may impact performance, and require additional development to ensure the quality and Frontier experience remains high. I would definitely welcome a little more freedom though, but maybe that's more to do with seeing things through the prism of content creation. Not just the addition of camera position and angle freedom, but I would also love to see a lower bottom end to the camera panning speeds. Currently, when set to the lowest possible speed, it still zips across the map at a fairly high clip. And lastly, please provide a toggle for screen edge panning. I am almost shocked that this hasn't been one of the more discussed lack of features. Really thought it would have naturally made its way into suggestions, and then included in the game by now. Number 2. More functional assets. Also during the dev vlog, functional structures such as vineyards were mentioned as a possible future inclusion. Personally, I would like to see a lot more separate buildings for things like a butcher's, fishmongers, soup vendors, and many others that require deeper explanation. I may put a video together in the future which goes into potential mechanics and details of new structure types. But having a lot more functional structures to choose from when designing and expanding our settlements would be great. And number 1. More decorative assets. Having played over 750 hours of Cities Skylines, I really feel providing countless decorative assets would benefit Frontier. Although the threat of raiders is an adequate challenge and legitimizes the military structures, it's never going to be a more in-depth RTS, like Total War, etc. So I feel it would instead be better to focus on providing more customization and assets to build with. Again, I may put together a video which explains these suggestions better, but for now, I will say 2 sweeping changes would be great. Firstly, options of gray brick variants of existing red brick structures. This shouldn't be nearly as much work as developing brand new assets. And secondly, an additional level of upgrade, a midpoint between the fairly rural initial structures and the upgraded red brick ones. Obviously, it would be great to see completely new decorative assets too, which could include items similar to the crates that were added in the 0.8 update. Larger or different configurations of barrels, crates, and other goods. Signposts, bunting poles, lots more statues and shrines, variations in market design and layout, maybe a wagon parking area to sell the downtown aesthetic. Obviously, there may be further development to consider when adding more substantial structures, but the important part is the number of options to customize our settlements, rather than the underlying mechanics. One of the only things about Frontier that has me slightly concerned is that the interface doesn't seem to be designed with a way to view and filter a large list of structures. Hopefully I am wrong, and they do intend to provide a long list of additional assets to build with, but we will have to see. So with a streamlined version of my wish list and minor concerns out of the way, now my experience with Frontier so far. Having played and enjoyed over 250 hours of Grim Dawn, when Farthest Frontier was first announced, and some screenshots were shown, I was pretty excited. I have always enjoyed strategy city builder type games, and also have an interest in history and the earlier ages of human settlements. Then as it drew closer to release in early access, due to some janky frame rates during streamer playthrough, my excitement dropped a fair bit. Also at a glance it looked more like Anno, which although an incredible game series, always feels far too grid-like for what I consider a medieval settlement should look like. Then before I knew it, early access was here, and so I decided I would give it a go anyway. I instantly identified with the menu screen animation and atmospheric soundtrack. My excitement had begun to grow again. Little did I know that Farthest Frontier was soon to become one of my all-time favorite games. I played countless hours of Battle for Middle-earth 2 many years ago, and after booting up a map and playing for several hours, it became obvious. Farthest Frontier was the Battle for Middle-earth 2 settlement builder I never knew I needed. I can't accurately describe the feeling I had as the seasons of my first year began to change. This, coupled with far more building freedom than I had led myself to believe, quickly ramped up my enjoyment of learning the basics. Then I began discovering some of the supply chain and desirability mechanics, which had my brain spiraling over different design ideas and layouts. Next was the terrain flattening tool, and the inherent challenges that came with it. Although an issue for some players, I enjoyed the challenge in experimenting with the tool. During a subsequent map, I had built a mountainside settlement with walled walkways, and decided to share my creation on the forums. It was at this point I decided I had found a game that I was passionate about, and would like to try and make content for. So I began recording some of my creations, and was pleasantly surprised by the support of the community. I would like to thank everyone who has watched, liked, or subscribed to the channel. Your support and feedback has been awesome, and encouraged me to try and improve and learn more about content creation. What is next? Well, I do intend on returning to my 3 time-lapse series, but also have some other ideas I want to start building. In fact, in this footage of my first hour, I am testing some of the layout for an idea I have been sketching. I am considering making a video showing some of my process using the Frontier Planner, found at Gamer's Digest. Let me know in the comments if that's something you would be interested in seeing. So, at this point, I have built enough shelters, a well, and a firewood splitter, providing a source of water and warmth for my villagers just in time for winter. We also have a hunter's cabin and forager's hut as sources of food, and I am now considering the placement of a root cellar. Even though it's just a warm-up map, I still like to consider where things should be placed. It is rarely the most efficient location that I choose, as I prioritize what makes sense to me as the settlement expands, and also how it will look. Now the storehouse. I consider at first including it in the more industrial-focused area to the north, but then decide I would like to build it much closer to the shelters. Opposite the well makes sense to me. A central and communal area for trade and services. Creating purpose and little narratives around the placement and layout of structures and services is really at the core of my building philosophy with Farthest Frontier. I find I have a very different mindset with more industrial-style builder survival games, such as Satisfactory, Factorio, Anno, and many others. I gravitate more towards efficiency and production chain fluidity in those types of builders. With Frontier, I like to imagine the journeys and lives of my villagers. Not only what makes sense, but where would this structure fit into the current settlement. So I have made it through the first year here in Holborn Meadows, and have started to place some dirt roads. When faced with hills and other geological features, I like to follow the contours. Anyone familiar with Zipf's law, and the path of least resistance, can probably identify with the concept. Basically, the majority will take the easiest route, which can mean a longer route that avoids climbing a hill, even a small one. So, when it makes sense, I try to follow the landscape, and consider the most common line through the terrain that the villagers might make. In the huge 0.8 patch, the dev team also brought us production limits. It's a feature that I honestly hadn't considered, but I am sure glad other members of the community did, and that the devs implemented it. Here I decide to move the starting resource wagon to within the bounds of the storehouse. I really like the little details like this, one of the many reasons you can easily roleplay elements of your settlement's journey. Back to the production limits, introduced in version 0.8. Balancing resources and harvesting is much easier now, freeing up some of the workforce, improving the flow of other economies. In the early game I set my firewood and planks to somewhere around 75 as an upper limit. I feel this is enough, until you start pushing past the Tier 2 Town Center upgrade. The requisites for upgrading the town center have changed slightly since the game first entered early access. And the most recent patch has increased some of the inhabitant values of shelter tiers. This does mean that expansion priority and planning has also changed. A need to consider how many shelters of which tier will get you through the population milestones. If I have a particular structure from a higher tier I wish to build around, I can find myself building a less organic grid-like residential area. Like in my Thralen's Dream build, where I plan to move houses from their initial placement to more organic layouts later in the build. Here, I am attempting to roughly mirror the road shape running from the well in the other direction, also capping off the end of the residential area, with a shelter facing the central storehouse and well area. Now the roughly mirrored road. With the last plot now flattened, it's time to place one more shelter. With Tier 1 shelters providing housing for up to 4 villagers, we will need at least another 3 shelters to hit the 40 population milestone. This will then allow us to upgrade the town center to Tier 2. Now, I am considering where to place a sawmill, as we definitely need to start producing planks. Sometimes I will explore other potential locations and orientations for structures, only to return to what initially felt right. Taking this time, and considering how a structure may fit into the settlement and landscape, really helps generate an investment in my settlements, and also will affect the placement of future structures and expansion. And there is also the opportunity to relocate these structures, if at a later date, they no longer make sense. A little adjustment for the position of the storage cart, just so it sits better in the storehouse loading area. Here, I am thinking about whether or not I want to keep this wooded area intact. With the herd of deer residing under its canopy, I decide I would rather leave it intact, so I make adjustments to the harvesting areas. Keeping the new arrivals in mind, and wanting to stay ahead of food demand, I place another foraging hut. If you are a regular viewer, you will probably be used to me harvesting trees at the edges of the visible play area. I like to use this as a method to explore, while also making the most of the journey, by acquiring more logs. Another hunting cabin to take advantage of nearby deer herds, and to help feed the growing population. I take a peek at the town center. I am so rusty, I have forgotten the requirements for the Tier 2 upgrade. I'll be speeding up some of the footage, where either I zoned out, or had been distracted by something IRL. Sometimes I may just be enjoying watching the winter approach and the snows start to fall. The darker months and seeing the buildings lit up reminds me of another addition I would love to see: torches. No doubt this would cause performance issues, but it would be great to be able to place torches in key places to sell the importance of an area. Or maybe even to introduce a pseudo-day/night cycle, where the lighting changes over the course of each month. Just an idea, not sure if it is something that could become a reality. Exploration has revealed the location for fishing, so let's place a nearby fishing hut. Moving the target work area for the most recently constructed hunting cabin, taking better advantage of the local resources. One of the reasons I tend to make more time-lapse style videos with Frontier is that I spend long periods of time looking and thinking about what future plans might be, or just enjoying the atmospherics, or people watching, as the villagers busy themselves with their day-to-day tasks and professions. I finally remembered to adjust the target work area for the fishing shack. The fishing areas benefit from how many of the blue nodes you can fit within the target area. So the shape of the water's edge is something you may want to consider when deciding on an area to start fishing. I am slow to notice, but my hunters are running out of arrows, so it is high time we built a Fletcher. Adding at least one more shelter to gradually encourage more immigration and hit those population milestones. More evidence of rust here, as I have completely forgotten the need for a marketplace. Time to fix that, and complete the Tier 2 requirements. Placing the market centrally, within reach of the shelters, and adjacent to the storehouse. I don't have any concrete testing behind theories like this, but it makes sense to me to have storage nearby my markets. It is now that I begin testing some of the layout idea I have for the next big project. I begin measuring and filling out some of the dirt roads, helping me get an idea of scale and placement. Not entirely sure why the alert for a heat wave inspired me to build a tannery, but that's what I opt to build next here. Due to the pacifist map setting, building a graveyard hasn't been a priority. But I decide to build one now anyway. I like to use odd number lengths when drawing plots for graveyards. Graveyards automatically generate entrances at the center of each side, so odd lengths actually provide symmetrical entrances. I finally noticed the icon above the town center, and begin construction of Tier 2. Now with access to Tier 2 structures, I look to add a festival pole as a central feature to the area I am testing. Not sure why it wasn't more obvious before, but I realized that one of these dirt roads is not the right size and position. So I fixed that. More signs of rust, as I remember that placing a wagon shop after reaching Tier 2 is pretty essential. There is at least one other service structure that I am yet to remember to build. Glad I started this warm-up map. I was even rustier than I had thought. Having eventually decided where I would like the first wagon shop to be constructed, the icons above some of my shelters finally remind me. We need a compost yard. Living in abject filth is not good for anyone. I ended up starting construction on a few other buildings, but nothing of great interest. I felt more comfortable with some of the basics again. So thanks for joining me for this little warm-up map and sharing some of my thoughts on Frontier. I hope you enjoyed the video, and again let me know in the comments section if you would like to see some of the planning on the Gamer Digest Planner for the next build. If not, I hope to see you for the next community showcase, and the start of the brand new settlement I plan to be starting soon. Thanks for watching, liking, and subscribing.